We connected up the printed circuit and played once again the videotape that Sir William Ballantyne, before his death, had sent to his friend, John Hendry. This time, we obtained an acceptable picture, which you are now about to see as we saw it.
We're getting a good picture here and can make a fair amount of detail. How is it with you? Fine here, Houston, Roger. Stand by to scan. Can you remind me your attempt to from the sequence camera to scanning? Okay, and mode 1 scanning. Stand by and move on. Standing by. Roger, standing by. Hey, is that an old riverman? Can you verify that to your town? Roger, Houston, we saw that. Stand by for readings, Houston. Standing by, Curaçao. Temperature 4 degrees Celsius. Температура 4 градуса Цельсия. Wind speed 21 kilometers per hour from southwest. Скорость ветра 21 км в час. Atmosphere pressure 707.7 millibars. Атмосфера давления 7 millibars. It's good. It's good, Yuri. On the nose, здесь работает. Stand by for landing, Curaçao. Stand by. Мы делаем, мы достигли. Hallelujah. Мы достигли. My God, what is that? Something moving. Something moved there. Что-то двигает по земле. Смотрите, здесь вода и воздух. Boy, if they ever take the wrecks off this thing, it's going to be the biggest date in history. 22nd May, 1962. We're on the planet Mars, and we have life. Замечательно! Отлично! Поздравляем! Наконец-то!
Usted recuerda la historia de Andrew Basiago. Se trata de un joven abogado que vive en la ciudad de Portland, quien asegura que cuando era niño, junto a su padre, quien era de la CIA de los Estados Unidos, fue teletransportado de una ciudad a otra, que fue parte de un experimento que se hizo con un gran número de niños. Más tarde, asegura, habría sido llevado a Marte con el mismo sistema. Asegura que hay dos realidades, una paralela a la nuestra, un mundo difícil de entender para nosotros, pero que existe aquí y ahora.
En mayo de este año, científicos de la NASA validaron la teoría de Albert Einstein sobre el espacio-tiempo. Este descubrimiento podría dar sentido a la teletransportación de un sitio a otro, es decir, viajar en el tiempo y en el espacio, incluso de un planeta a otro. Sin embargo, Andrew Basiago aseguró a Jaime Maussan que esto ya ocurre desde la década de los 60 y que incluso él viajó al planeta Marte. Esta es la historia. Andrew Basiago explicó a Tercer Milenio que fue crononauta, es decir, un viajero en el tiempo que a los 6 años participó en un programa secreto del gobierno de los Estados Unidos llamado Pegasus.
My father and I first jumped through a Tesla teleporter in Building 68 at the old Curtiss-Wright Aeronautical Company facility in Woodridge, New Jersey, sometime between September of 1967 and September of 1968. We know that because we arrived in the state capitol complex in Santa Fe. The teleport would open up a tunnel in the time-space continuum. You would find yourself moving through it, and when the tunnel closed, you would find yourself elsewhere on the surface of the planet.
2 décadas más tarde, su destino estaba en viajar en el tiempo al planeta Marte. Según su crónica, Basiago viajó de la Tierra a Marte en minutos y al llegar descubrió estructuras que parecían ser una base militar.
And Courtney Hunt was speaking to me through the telecom and saying, "Are you ready?" and so forth. And I finally grew impatient because I wanted to go to Mars. I don't like waiting for things. I couldn't tell that much was happening. All that was happening was that panels of light on the top and bottom of the elevator started blinking. And then about 10 minutes into the 20-minute journey to Mars, the entire form of this box-like elevator began to morph and crumple and reposition itself into a cylinder. And when that happened, I had to steady myself in the elevator, such as you would if you were walking through a water main. You know, you're walking in a cylindrical object, so you have to kind of steady yourself. And I saw that the ceiling had become the surface I was looking at, and I could see this sort of swirling pattern. They had opened up a vortal tunnel in the fabric of time-space, just as the teleporter did back when I was a child on Project Pegasus. And that lasted for maybe 2 to 4 minutes or so, and then it began, the cylinder, and then it began correcting itself, and then it just completely rectified its original shape. And then about 10 minutes later, as Courtney had described, the door opened, and I walked out into what looked like, if you can imagine sort of the basement of a modern sports arena, the infrastructure of that built into an existing underground cavern of an ancient civilization. There was sort of a big cave in which I could see these modern tension struts, a sort of infrastructure that had been placed inside, and the jump room itself had been placed inside this ancient cavern. I walked through what was clearly the irregular eye sockets of some kind of skull on the surface. I turned around, I could see it was a skull. I could see the rust-red terrain of Mars. I could see that Mars has a pale blue sky. I could see that, or sense rather, that Mars smelt of gunpowder, which must have been some sulfur content, at least at that location. And I turned and I saw a small human being from our civilization on Earth run up to me. And then 2 more individuals a couple years older than me, I would say they were maybe 21, 22, 23 years of age, ran up to me, two men and a woman. And I was interacting with the first individual who ran up to my location. And they were clearly human beings from Earth. They weren't Martians. They looked normal. They were speaking English.
Andrew Basiago guardó el secreto por años y en esta primera entrevista a la televisión aseguró tener miedo por revelar uno de los secretos mejor guardados del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, pero aseguró que es necesario para construir una civilización sustentable, la civilización del siglo XXI a través de la teletransportación.
That's the world that awaits us in the 21st century. And that is to inform the people of the world that for 40 years we've had available to us this revolutionary form of transportation that we could use to directly implement to achieve sustainability in the 21st century.
Then like to open it up to questions. And I'm expecting a lot probably about Pegasus rather than my Mars material. But I thought that I would just establish the fact that Mars is an inhabited planet. We now have not just substantial evidence of that, but I think evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I just thought I'd march through and sort of summarize what we found. I continue to receive data from a growing cadre of research associates around the world now. There are a number, for example, of photographs of humanoids that have been derived from NASA's photographs and the photographs of the European Space Agency that we haven't even published yet. Okay, so we've not only made the linkage between the humanoids that live primarily underground on Mars and the overwhelming artwork that we see that litters the entire surface of the red planet, but we have now identified that the humanoids on Mars are in fact the makers of the carved statuary, which is so ubiquitous on the red planet. So I thought I would move rather rapidly through the Mars presentation. We have some time limitations, and then open it up to questions, primarily I would assume about Pegasus, but also feel free to entertain any questions. I'll entertain any questions you have regarding my Mars findings as well. In the first part, we're going to look at the discovery of life on Mars. Mars, as I said, is an inhabited planet. Evidence that Mars harbors several types of human beings, numerous animal species, and elaborately carved statues is contained in several NASA photographs that I analyzed last year in PIA 10214 and PIA 11049, which are essentially westward views and southward views of the Columbia Basin taken from the western edge of the home plate plateau by NASA's rover Spirit in late 2007. They were sent back to Earth in early 2008, and I spent many thousands of hours in 2008 analyzing the data and found, as I said in my paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars in 2008, essentially a cosmic treasure trove of images of humanoid beings, animal species, and carved statues on Mars. A little bit about my background. I was one of America's early time-space explorers, as I described on Wednesday on Coast. Officially speaking, it was from 1969 to 72 that I served in DARPA's Project Pegasus, although the first time I teleported on behalf of the U.S. government was during the 1967-68 time frame, and we know that dating is reliable because when we teleported to Santa Fe, my father and I, and then drove over to meet with Dr. Harold M. Agnew when he was then director of the W Division, the Weapons Division, at the Los Alamos National Labs, there was a discussion between my dad and Dr. Agnew, and Dr. Agnew looked over at me and said, "How old?" And my dad and I answered simultaneously, 6. So we know that that meeting with Agnew took place between September of 1967 and September of 1968. I was born in September of 61. And that's also a means that we can use historically to establish that physical teleportation via vortal tunnels propagated by Tesla energetic arrays was already a technical proficiency that had been accomplished by the U.S. Department of Defense by the 1967-68 timeframe. Officially, I was placed in Pegasus in the fall of 1969 as a 3rd grader and involved primarily in teleporting back and forth between New Jersey and New Mexico and some future locations, because of course to teleport back you need team members in the future to send you back to the present. And also I described maybe a little bit less on Wednesday the different probes of the future that we, in the past, that we took in a virtual form of time travel via the chronovisor. So those were the major emphasis of Project Pegasus. I think it was as a result of those experiences that in 1981 I was essentially requested, almost urged, by Courtney M. Hunt, who was the CIA agent they placed in my life in the early 80s. You know, throughout June of 81, he was asking me, "Do you want to go to Mars?" And I said, quite frankly, no. You know, I didn't really want to leave Mother Earth. And he said, "Well, you have to." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because the survival of the human race on Earth depends on it." And I really don't know what he meant by that. He was just speaking of the general proposition that we're going to have to be courageous enough to leave our home planet as astronauts or chrononauts in order to secure our home planet here. Or maybe there was some more elaborate stratagem involved that centered on myself. I just simply don't know. He basically told me, "Well, you know, get ready because you're going. You can't really talk us out of it." And so those 2 teleportings that took place in July and August of 1981, when I was 19 and going to UCLA here in Los Angeles, were undertaken by Jump Room. They were at essentially a CIA facility in El Segundo. We went up via elevator up to the 5th floor, checked in at a kind of a desk there, a counter, kind of like a Fijian suite that you'd have in a law firm. My name was provided to the one person who was working there, and then Courtney said, "Well, Andy, why don't you step in the teleporter?" And I said, "Where is it?" And I was familiar with essentially the elliptical-shaped teleporters that had existed at Curtiss Wright when I was a child. And he said, we just came up here, and it's the elevator." And so I walked back in the elevator. The elevator went up to about the 8th floor, and Courtney said a couple times on the intercom, "Are you ready?" And I kept on saying yes, and I was getting exasperated with him. And I finally said, "Light this candle." And then essentially I felt a great deal of pressure. The elevator began to morph into more of a cylindrical shape, and those journeys took about 20 minutes to reach Mars. As a kid, we were just jumping in seconds back and forth between suburban New Jersey and Santa Fe, New Mexico. This is a little bit anachronistic at this point, but I just wanted to point out that my discovery of life on Mars has been the target of a disinformation campaign, essentially defaming me and distorting my evidence. Let me just cite one example. They had Ray Villard, who's the news director for the Hubble Space Telescope, I mean, he's a NASA employee, allege in a 3,000-word hit piece on the Discovery Channel website, which is supposed to embody the highest level of science writing in the world, quote-unquote, "If Boshago has found evidence of little leprechauns on Mars, why doesn't he show any of them in his writings?" Well, that's what my writings have been about. So this presentation is about 6 months old, but I was still sort of wrapped up in the fact that they were spending your tax dollars to defame me, an independent whistleblower and attorney at law, And I think I've advanced the cause of science by deriving this data from NASA and the ESA's own photographs. Your tax dollars are being spent essentially to defame an independent researcher who has found evidence in NASA's own photographs that Mars is an inhabited planet. Now, why is this going on? Well, the cover-up of life on Mars is obviously linked to the quantum cover-up, because we've been going there via teleportation since at least 1981. I mean, we may have been going earlier. I was involved in 1981. So when as brilliant a researcher as David Wilcox states that there are now 600,000 U.S. personnel up on the red planet, I can't discount that, because when they sent me up 28 years ago, there were already human beings up there. I mean, on the first teleportation by myself, I was greeted by 3 young adults who were CIA personnel. They were human beings from our civilization that were already up there. The second time when I went out with Courtney Hunt, there was a man that we talked to in a building that was about a half a mile from the skull that I walked out through the eye socket of from the underground location. And he was also a CIA agent, personnel of our civilization here on Earth. And so I think they're very phobic about even discussing the fact that Mars has an indigenous ecology and civilization, because they don't even want us to think about the fact that there are living humanoids on Mars, both from our own civilization and from the primarily underground civilization that exists on the red planet. Several days after I published my paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, in 2008, actually it was 4 days later, I was contacted by a career CIA officer. In fact, she's the niece of the man who introduced Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger as friends, a woman by the name of Virginia Olds. And Virginia passed along information from the CIA that the CIA estimates that there are about 1 million humanoids living in the primarily underground civilization on Mars. So I can't confirm David Wilcox's estimate that it's 600,000 U.S. personnel on Mars, but it certainly is, you would presume, would be numerous at this point, 30 years after I was set up there as a 19-year-old. In a breakthrough that occurred just several months ago, one of our most gifted ufologists, the great Bob Dean, revealed this photograph of presumably a U.S. base on Mars while appearing at the European Exopolitical Summit in Barcelona. I find this kind of interesting because the underground location that they teleported me to was essentially sort of like a concrete bunker, very much like the rooms that you find one level below a baseball stadium. It was basically a deep underground military base type construction. And this, to me, somebody with 2 master's degrees in urban planning, looks like it could possibly be a cement, organic type of structure that could have been readily poured by human personnel from Earth on another planet. Why am I speaking out? I'm speaking out because I believe that as the natural heritage of humankind, human beings on Earth have a right to the truth about the natural history of the solar system that we inhabit. Now, my paper, I do believe, embodies a breakthrough in science. There were 50 discrete discoveries that were achieved in the paper. I know that it's a significant writing. I'm not boasting, I'm simply saying that this is part of the story, because when I was permitted to read my paper in 1971, and also to see the photographs, my dad and the other people involved were very excited. They were sort of preparing me relative to the significance of the discovery of life on Mars in the same way that they've been preparing our presidents. It was sort of like, get ready, you're going to be involved in something significant in the future. The paper itself contains highly significant data. It's the first data from Mars to contain images of humans and animals. The beings in the data are captured in their natural living state. The paper contains the first images of humanoids living in their natural state of existence on another planet. And it also shows the beautiful colors of Mars. Mars is spoken of as the red planet. It's difficult to pick up on this projection here, but it's also a place of beautiful turquoise colors, pink. Here's a pewter head of a child that you can see jutting out of a cliff right there on the home plate plateau. So it was because of the significance of this data in terms of the paper containing the first images of the ecology and civilization of another planet, that I wrote the president of the National Geographic Society in December of 2008, asking him to publish my findings in our leading geographic journal in the world, a journal that I've been reading since I was a small boy. And at this point, a year later, almost a year later, I've received no response from the National Geographic Society, despite the fact that they stated in a special edition published the month before I published my paper that space is the once and future frontier of the human race. My paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, analyzes a single photograph. I mentioned it's PIA 10214. I think it's the most significant photograph that has ever been taken by human beings from Earth, because in it we cross the threshold that separates our past as an earthbound species from our future as a spacefaring civilization in contact with extraterrestrial species. So it's a very, very significant photograph. Can you see any life forms this far out with this degree of compression of detail? No, and that's why NASA is placing its panorama shots from Mars in such a concentrated way on the internet, because just as if we were to park our car and look out at the San Fernando Valley, we wouldn't be able to make out individual features.
You were one of 140 kids.
The program involved 140 kids, and then we were just in the manner of what Project Talent was doing in other federal projects. As individuals, we were jumping through different sets of hoops, so I don't know if all 140 actually teleported.
Did you have contact with them, or did you?
I was the captain of one of the regiments. Each of these 14 divisions of 10 kids had colors, so I was captain of Blue Team, which simply meant that I had specialized training about what to do, basically to pull rank if there was a mishap, like there was when we got to Santa Fe, but it wasn't 1971, it was 1991. So I knew who the kids were, I mean, at least 7 or 8 of them, and I found them, and the problem was that I uncovered evidence of their brainwashing simply by interviewing them. But let me just cite one example. I got Sharon to remember that we were taken up to ITT Defense Communications for the chronovisor probe to 2013 in early November of 1971, and the discrepant element of that was that a teacher from our school who had been fired for his performance the previous year was in one of the drivers in the car caravan that took us up to ITT Defense. I got her to remember that, and also to begin to discuss the fact that we were in some kind of strange technical activity up there. But the next Saturday when I interviewed her again, she not only forgot what she had said, she forgot that we had had the discussion. So in the book I'm going to show who I found, what they confirmed, and how I proved that they were still victims of the brainwashing that I had overcome. But they did confirm important elements involving quantum access in the learning lab. The Montauk chair, the spinning to induce out-of-body experiences, the remote viewing exercises with U.S. Navy officers sometimes coming to the lab. So they provided a lot of corroboration, but I couldn't get them over the hurdle of what happened off campus, which meant then I had to in turn reality test what I remembered that had happened off campus. And I got to the point where I not only confirmed by going to Santa Fe, but I had one of the leading scholars of the U.S. intelligence community, Dr. Jean Maria Arrigo, literally say to me, somewhat exasperated, Andy, stop asking all these, seventh degree of reality kind of doubts about what you happened. Just get with the program, man. You have uncovered what happened to you. You were in all that weird quantum exploration stuff in the early 70s. So I explored all other possibilities, mind control, delusion, fantasy, mistake, implantation of false memories during alien abduction. I went through all those, and I ultimately found physical evidence of my presence in New Mexico. I developed whistleblower testimony from people who were in the project, like Dr. Harold Agnew, Dr. Stephen J. Lukasik of DARPA, or people who heard about what was going on in the project, like Cliff Harris, the climatologist, when he was working with Dr. Ivan Browning, when Browning was Director of Science and Technology for CIA. So I'm going to just show through, the legal technique called inundation. I'm going to basically give an inundation of evidence in the book to prove that it was a real project.
That you were, because in the brainwashing, the color to achieve was the gold, right?
I don't know. We did have some education around the idea of feeling special or not putting any limits on what we could achieve. But I think the blue color was just random because it was actually just colors that were assigned to the 14 teams.
Are you,
Let me, actually, David, I see other hands here. Just, we'll come back to you, right here.
wouldn't this be considered with national security? I mean, why aren't they trying to shut you up?
That's my question.
I've just decided to run the gauntlet of risk because I don't want to not fulfill my destiny by being afraid of being killed. But they did make an attempt to shut me up. I had a meeting in the abandoned parking lot of the Wolf Creek Pass Ski Lodge in southwest Colorado with somebody who represented himself as working for the executive office of the president. That had been set up, those meetings in New Mexico and Colorado in June of 2003, which included a very nice meeting that I had with Governor Bill Richardson when he was attending the antique car show up in Chama, New Mexico on that day. Resulted in me being informed a lot about the fact that I was on the right track and that, you know, I was also involved in something very basically sensitive from a national security perspective, because it was at that meeting with this gentleman who, you know, it was an arranged meeting through an historian from Texas who had ties to the CIA and the ONI. So I was literally being told, okay, now go over here and this person will tell you something. Okay, this person was working as an intermediate between me and the intelligence committee, between me and the government. During the last meeting at the ski lodge, he basically said that if I didn't stop researching, talking about, or writing about my project experiences, they quote unquote couldn't guarantee my survival. So that was either a veiled threat or it was them helping me by saying, if you don't shut up about the Pegasus generation of technologies, somebody else is going to kill you from another faction or something.
You mentioned that on the George Noy program, that Pegasus and Stargate was kind of brought up and brought as a television program. Was that in an effort to discount the reality?
Yeah, I was discussing the fact that science fiction was invented as a literary genre to put information from classified projects like this in the public domain and confuse the public about the names of the technologies, how they worked, to rebut the claims of individuals like me who would talk about classified technologies. My point there was that the first episode of Stargate Atlantis was Project Pegasus, which was literally the name of the real project. And I know that because when they told us what the project descriptor was, they had a drawing of Pegasus on the chalkboard. It was a beautiful drawing of using pastel chalk. And also they were using the phrase Stargate. The Stargate was the device that they set up at the Cerritos Cultural Center Gymnasium that we used to access the year 2045, to gather data there and bring it back to the present.
Please tell us what you gathered anytime after 2012.
Well, I was bringing up the point that we don't need to expect or anticipate catastrophe in 2012 because all of the chronovisor probes were to different timelines. That, in fact, was detected by the project when I was on it. And so my point is that if we set our intention for planetary, cultural renaissance in 2012 rather than catastrophe, maybe that's the timeline that we'll get to enjoy. I was just raising the point that, however, they were able to discern a particular person's destiny, for example, Barack Obama's, let's say, as indicated by that experience. And I believe that was by sending people via teleportation. If you can kind of conceive of it like this, when you jump through the teleporter, it's like jumping between rooms in the same building, the same timeline. But the chronovisors involved an energy field that they were setting up as a hologram that was having a lensing effect where other timelines were being bent into the laboratory. So the chronovisor was inherently unreliable for providing actionable intelligence. But I do note that by the time, certainly I had my conversations with my father during the latter part of his life in the late 1980s, that they could discern discrete data points that would happen to a particular person. Like when I asked my dad, such as becoming president, right? But when I asked my dad, well, what can you tell me about my future? He said, well, you go to Cambridge. And I said, what do you mean, Harvard and Cambridge, Mass? And he said, no, Cambridge, UK, Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. And I said, I do? And he goes, yeah. And then he said, because he had shared information from the future with me, he said, so if you're invited to go there, go. Because they were always trying to give a double positive when they revealed the future to you, because they didn't want to dissuade you from pursuing a destiny by revealing it to you before it occurred. So that became part of my actual life experience. In other words, that's on my resume now because I was invited to go and went there. So I'm saying that certainly by the late 80s, they could predict discrete destinies. And that means that they have a control over society that has not been contemplated, which was really why I was talking about the presidency. I think they may have done the right thing by informing future presidents of their destinies. If you know, Harry Truman said when Franklin Roosevelt died, I felt like the whole world had been put on my shoulders and my feet were sinking into the ground. I mean, it must be a god-awful thing to realize that you're going to be president of the United States when you wake up, you know, on the morning of your inaugural ceremony. So I think it was probably the right thing that they said, well, we don't want to change the future, but we do want to optimize it by revealing certain information to certain people who are going to be implicated in particular destinies that have a particular consequentiality to them. And so that's why I was talking about that.
You saw 2013 on George Norton show. You saw 2013 Washington, D.C. being on the water.
We were in specialized suits, and they had us moving for about a half hour to a location where that location in time space was forming in the future. And it was almost like going there physically. Clearly we were in a hologram and had specialized equipment on. It was almost like sort of flying there. And they had trained us that when you felt 3 pulses, you're going to be at the end of that transit. And you should quickly look to the left or right to see what was there. And it was the U.S. Supreme Court building underwater. I mean, it was like diving on a marine room.
Washington, D.C.
Yes.
So,
and they confirmed that later, that it was that building.
Was it?
They confirmed the date and the building. Not when we were being interviewed by the officer from, you know, for the lieutenant commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence, but the next week in the learning lab, we said, what was that building and what year was it? And they kind of sheepishly admitted that.
It's very important for our audience and the tape. From 0 to 100%, what's the percentage you would say that this event, this time travel you did, will signify the actual event?
I wouldn't put it in ratios because we're living in a cosmic, you know, quantum hologram that it has virtually an infinite set of adjacent timelines that are very close and internested. For example, if you move into another timeline, you often don't detect it because you're now just wherever you are, right? So I think the chances are 0 or 1. I would look at it more in a binary way. Either those of us in this room right now are going to live a 2013 that's very wet, or we're not. So I think that you should look at it as being in the timeline where that either occurs or doesn't occur, because in fact, the probability can't even be calculated because there's an infinite set of timelines where it either does or doesn't happen.
What you say is so many different Earths, planets, and so many different people in different timelines at the same time exist.
Yes, and we have evidence of people stepping out of their timeline. There was that case in New York City where somebody stepped in front of a cab and was killed, and he had clothing, identity, and everything else from like the 1940s. He just simply stepped out on a curb in 1943 and got hit by a car in 1983. We have those cases. And those X-Files have been studied, and they are people who literally step into an adjacent timeline just doing some kind of ordinary type of activity. Steve?
What is the current status?
Of what? Courtney Hunt. Courtney Hunt had a stroke in 2001 in which he lost the ability to speak, and he's now deceased. But I want to get a picture of him and interview his colleagues. The person who confirmed that he wasn't just somebody snowing me, but in fact was, you know, in other words, if he was part of some cult or mind control group or something, everything that happened with Hunt could have been propagated by, let's say, virtual technology or something like the trip to, you know, to El Segundo and going to Mars and everything. But the person who confirmed his status as a career CIA was Captain Ernest Garcia, who even remembered me and some of the project principals from Pegasus. He remembered my dad's friend Connie Chavez from Albuquerque. So we were able to, in my investigation, I was able to verify that Courtney Hunt was career CIA, as he said he was.
Therefore, what is the status of Captain Garcia?
Captain Ernest Garcia is alive, living in Albuquerque. He did an oral history about some of his more conventional experiences working for the military and the intel community in an oral history that Jean Marie Arrigo did for UC Berkeley. His fingerprints are over many projects. He was not only on Pegasus, but he was a guard on the Dead Sea Scroll expedition of the Israeli archaeologist Yigal Yadin. He was the whistleblower on the use of the Yanomamo Indians in Central America in U.S. biowarfare testing. So Garcia is somebody with some provenance. He was giving me a lot of information, then he got scared. You know, and that's kind of how these kind of investigations go. Somebody will do 2 or 3 phone calls, maybe meet you at a restaurant at some point, and then they get afraid of being killed and they clam up. So I lost Garcia as a source, but I have a substantial amount of information that I was able to verify with him. And his status as somebody who was in a lot of these classified defense projects has been basically established in terms of university history. In other words, the conventional history community knows who Garcia is, and people have done oral histories with him and so forth. Right here.
Who invented or created the technology, or where did it come from?
The teleporter, as my dad said when we were talking one day at lunch in Albuquerque after we had teleported there, he said, most of what we're doing in the project comes from the works of Nikola Tesla. The device was in the papers of Tesla that were seized by the War Department and forwarded to the Los Alamos physicists when they were gathering to build the atomic bomb. So the true history of U.S. time travel is sort of as this secret sidebar to the Manhattan Project. Some of the same people were involved, like Harold Agnew, like his mentor at the University of Chicago, Enrico Fermi. The chronovisor technology was the result of an accidental discovery by two Vatican musicologists named Ernetti and Gemelli, who were studying Gregorian chants in the 1940s and were developing a specialized microphone to split the voices in the Gregorian chants when something Gemelli's father had said to him in childhood came through the microphone. And then they partnered with Enrico Fermi again. There's the principal figure in all this. We're going to have to do more investigation on Enrico Fermi. And they modeled it into a hologram of a past or future event.
Guillermo Marconi. Él, en compañía de 8 científicos de diferentes partes del mundo, ha podido realizar un viaje físico al planeta Marte, con naves creadas aquí en la Tierra bajo la asesoría de diferentes científicos del planeta Marte. El doctor Narciso Genovese será quien nos diga en viva voz toda la información de su experiencia. Doctor Narciso Genovese, mucho gusto y bienvenido a esta entrevista.
Mucho gusto.
Quisiéramos saber, en primer lugar, ¿en qué fecha usted realiza ese viaje a Marte?
En el año 33, 1933.
¿Y por qué fue usted escogido para ir a Marte?
Para los viajeros a Marte, fueron escogidos en vista de los fines que nos proponíamos. Por ejemplo, había especialistas en medicina, en física, hasta en religión. Y para el idioma, su servidor fue escogido.
Doctor, ¿cómo nace la formación de esta experiencia para viajar a Marte? ¿Cuáles son los orígenes y los pasos que se siguieron a partir de que usted es discípulo de Guillermo Marconi? ¿Qué tiene que ver Guillermo Marconi con este fenómeno?
Guillermo Marconi, como todo el mundo sabe, es el inventor del inalámbrico y la radio. Y todas las aplicaciones de la televisión tuvieron en él su origen. Ahora él, después de casi concluida su labor en la radiotelegrafía, se dedicó casi exclusivamente por todo el resto de su vida a estudiar la energía solar. Porque la electricidad no es más que un efecto de la energía solar. Porque la energía es fuerza y es luz. De manera que entonces, con todos los experimentos que pudo verificar, se dio cuenta, y sobre todo con observación de las nubes, la cantidad de energía eléctrica que recogen las nubes en el espacio. Y también verificó con el envío de la energía eléctrica a Sydney y luego a Río de Janeiro para iluminar el Cristo de los Andes, se dio cuenta que la energía solar, la energía del sol, es positiva. y la energía que encierran los planetas, o sea, la fuerza centrípeta, es negativa. Y la nube, naturalmente, cuando cierta cantidad de fuerza negativa se condensa en la nube, haciendo contacto con la energía solar, estalla el rayo.
¿Cómo y dónde se han reunido o se reunieron ese grupo de científicos para crear esa base de experimentos para ir a Marte?
Para reunir el grupo de científicos que pudieron realizar eso, naturalmente tiene una historia larga. Y se comenzó después de muerto Marconi. Poco después de morir Marconi, se inició el estudio de sus apuntes científicos, su diario científico. Porque Marconi tenía muchos amigos, sobre todo entre científicos de Alemania, de Francia, de Holanda, Noruega, Suecia, etcétera, y de Inglaterra. Porque Inglaterra siempre fue amiga de Marconi. Como se sabe, Inglaterra financió el experimento que llevó a la práctica la radio. Porque Marconi era hijo de una madre sueca. Y un tío de Marconi, era el ministro de Hacienda de Inglaterra. Por eso que Inglaterra financió. Italia no podía en ese entonces llegar a tanto. Le pasó como a Cristóbal Colón, que en Italia donde encontraba auxilio, fue a otras potencias. De manera que estos amigos que frecuentaban a Marconi, después de su muerte, fueron en busca del diario de las notas científicas de Marconi, sobre todo sobre la energía solar.
¿Dónde estaba ese diario, doctor?
Ese diario estaba en el Vaticano.
¿Por qué estaba en el Vaticano?
Estaba en el Vaticano porque Marconi era muy amigo de un padre jesuita, el padre Gianfranceschi, que era jefe de los gabinetes físicos del Vaticano. Y Marconi dijo varias veces que ese sacerdote sabía mucho más que él en electricidad.
Amigos y amigas que nos ven, hemos sabido a través de su libro, que dice que se titula Yo estuve en Marte, que un grupo de científicos se trasladaron a la región del Mato Grosso y de ahí iniciaron todo su trabajo para luego dirigirse a Marte. ¿Nos puede comentar detalles sobre en particular cuánto tiempo duró la construcción y cuánto duró el viaje?
Naturalmente estos científicos apenas lograron localizar el diario científico de Marconi, fueron al Vaticano suplicando al Papa que los entregara para llevarlos a la práctica. El Papa accedió al fin sin ningún otro interés, pero con una sola pretensión, una sola exigencia, que no se entregara a ningún gobierno de la Tierra los efectos y los resultados de esos experimentos, puesto que Marconi, con verificar una prueba del rayo de la muerte que se dio en llamarse entonces, había dado muestras de un potencial fenomenal sobre eso. Todo se puso de acuerdo, entonces comenzaron a reunirse. Primero, a buscar el lugar. Por supuesto, anticipadamente, se había iniciado una especie de consulta, solicitud de fondos, porque eso requería algo serio, y por toda parte del mundo. pero todo el que contribuía, uno entre ellos, fue precisamente el Papa, el primero que contribuyó, que donó todas las joyas que había recibido en regalo con ocasión del Año Santo.
¿Nos puede mencionar el nombre de este Papa?
El nombre de este Papa es Pío XI. Pío XI, Achille Ratti, que era antes cardenal de Milán. Un hombre famosísimo y un científico de primer orden, tanto que único papa en la historia que resultó ser electo papa siendo bibliotecario. Él era bibliotecario de la Biblioteca del Vaticano, como antes lo había sido de la Ambrosiana de Milán. Ese papa admiraba mucho a Marconi, y Marconi lo frecuentaba mucho, tanto que Marconi fue el que le obsequió y dirigió personalmente la construcción de la Radio Vaticana. La hizo él con sus propias manos, es decir, lo dirigió personalmente, porque entonces habían comenzado a hacer introducir tantas novedades los ingenieros y que Marconi no estaba de acuerdo. Me acuerdo que el primer día que habló el Papa por radio, que fue fenomenal, porque un hombre que puede decir, cuando Marconi se la entregó, se comunicaba al mundo por medio de la estación de San Pablo, de Roma, hasta que al fin Marconi cogió el micrófono y le entregó al Papa y le dijo: tomad, Padre Santo, que el mundo entero está pendiente de vuestros labios. Yo jamás creía que Dios me diera este premio de hacer que la voz de su representante fuera oída por todos los habitantes de la tierra instantáneamente. El Papa pues recibió la radio, comenzó a hablar y dijo inmediatamente, hubo varios comentarios de Nueva York. Hablaron con Marconi en el Vaticano, ahí mismo, le dijeron: ¿cómo es eso? Excelencia, que se oye tan claro, tan poderoso, tan fuerte, tan esto. Y Marconi contestó muy sencillamente, como era él, hombre sencillo, porque ahora me dejaron hacer como yo quería.
Entonces tenemos de que el Papa Pío XI
sí,
apoya económicamente.
Apoyó.
Y hay otras personas que apoyaron económicamente.
Ya no, pero sí apoyó. Y con el Papa, varias otras personalidades.
¿Podría mencionar alguna otra personalidad?
Podría mencionar a Domingo Perón, el rey de España, Alfonso XIII, y otros personajes grandes del mundo árabe, inclusive, varios. Todos, una comisión especial, los visitaba, asesorado por la presencia moral del Papa, que los que querían, debían ayudar, cooperar, colaborar para una gran misión. Pero todos los donantes, es decir, ninguno de los donantes podía pedir detalles del por qué, ni cuál era esa. De manera que así se reunieron los fondos y comenzaron.
¿Y cómo llevaban el material desde el mundo civilizado hasta la selva del Mato Grosso? Es el Mato Grosso, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Hasta la selva del Mato Grosso en el Brasil, para construir estos artefactos con los cuales querían llegar a viajar a Marte. ¿Cómo hacían?
Se entró, primeramente, los primeros pasos, los primeros hombres que lograron, que fueron a escoger los lugares, entraron por Colombia, por la selva de Caquetá. Es el punto exacto en que terminan los Andes.
Necesitamos que en el estilo de la velocidad de la luz haciendo esa imitación, nos haga una descripción sintética de cómo fue ese viaje a Marte, sintéticamente qué vio, su ida, su regreso, el tiempo y los principales detalles sobre el particular.
Está bien. Hemos dicho que iniciaron su entrada por el lado de la selva de Caquetá, que conecta con la de Brasil. De ahí se entró en Brasil. Comenzaron a iniciarse los preparativos. Bueno, es difícil dar todos los detalles porque el tiempo apremia. De ahí comenzó a prepararse precisamente el viaje. Los marcianos tomaron contacto.
Sí.
¿Por qué?
Físico, contacto físico.
Contacto físico, real. Varios marcianos se entrevistaron en la Tierra con individuos de distintas clases. Todo el mundo lo sabe, ha sucedido muchas veces. Y admiraron mucho a los hombres. Más, se convencieron que los hombres éramos tan dignos y tan inteligentes y tan buenos como ellos. Pero cuando actuábamos en sociedad, nadie podía explicarles a ellos el porqué de las guerras.
¿Cuántos días duró su viaje a Marte?
Perdón, cuando se comenzó el viaje, se hizo en 3 días.
¿Y cuánto tiempo duró la construcción de las naves?
Eso duró como 2 años.
¿Y cómo fue su llegada a Marte? ¿Cómo viajó adentro? ¿Tuvo que utilizar un equipo especial o no?
No, se prepararon entonces los aparatos, las máquinas, los ovnis, que ellos en la misma forma, como lo habían construido ellos los suyos, ellos ayudaron a los nuestros. Se instituyó una camaradería, más trajeron otro grupo de técnicos de Marte, que eso sí vinieron en un aparato gigantesco, casi del tamaño de media manzana, con 40 hombres y varios equipos, inclusive metales especiales para aleaciones y mucho oro que obsequiaron a los nuestros.
Ese oro es para continuar la financiación.
El oro es para continuar los gastos de los trabajos, la financiación de todos los trabajos que se hacen. Porque el oro en Marte es abundante, pero no tiene el valor monetario, económico que se le da aquí en la Tierra. Tiene los méritos físicos que ya conocemos.
¿En Marte hay religión?
En Marte sí, claro que hay religión. En Marte hay religión y todos son religiosos. Y solo es una religión. Porque Marte es un planeta, tiene el tamaño, la mitad de la Tierra, pero no tiene distintos continentes. Es un solo continente. En Marte hay 3/4 partes de tierra y una de agua.
Eso indica que si hay una sola religión, no hay varios gobiernos, o hay varios gobiernos.
Tampoco hay gobierno, no hay ninguno. Sino que,
¿Cómo son la gente de Marte físicamente?
físicamente son como nosotros, más o menos. Porque en todo el universo parece, según se ha comprobado, donde hay seres inteligentes, son una semejanza nuestra. Como si hay pinos en Marte, son pinos como los nuestros. Donde el ambiente es análogo es el efecto, la vida en el planeta.
¿Cómo se sintió usted frente a frente con la gente de Marte?
Con la gente de Marte se tiene una impresión hermosa, porque el marciano, ante todo, es un ser, por su cultura, por sus tradiciones, por toda su historia, altamente claro, nítido, franco, sincero. En Marte, por ejemplo, no se conoce la mentira. Desde luego, nadie entendería el por qué hay que decir una cosa pensando o siendo otra. De manera que entonces, en Marte, ¿qué decía?
Sí, doctor, ¿qué dicen? Están enterados el gobierno de los Estados Unidos y las autoridades espaciales de Rusia sobre su viaje a Marte. Si están enterados, ¿cuál es su actitud con ellos? Ante usted.
Están enterados ellos. Lo saben perfecto, pero nada pueden hacer. También porque ellos han mostrado muy poco buena voluntad. Por ejemplo, han hecho viajes a la Luna y a Marte mismo y nunca han dicho la verdad de lo que han visto.
Según he sabido que su teléfono ha sido intervenido y su correspondencia también.
Mi correspondencia y mi teléfono fueron intervenidos. Me invitaron a varias partes de Estados Unidos para conferencias, pero el objeto principal era poder sacar algo. Pero no se puede. Además, cuando se habla de potencias, se habla solo de Estados Unidos y Rusia. Es un error muy grave, porque hay muchas otras potencias en la Tierra que son más grandes todavía, porque nosotros nos hemos envilecido tanto que cuanto más criminal es una persona, más grande la tenemos. Por ejemplo, los grandes de hoy, decimos que son los grandes porque lograron matar más hombres, más gente. Fueron más asesinos. Por eso los veneramos como grandes. Pero aquí en la Tierra hay naciones que son muy avanzadas. Y también hay lugares de la Tierra. Y quizás si en Argentina no hay algo así también. Alguno que otra persona, un grupo de gente que pueda dar más orientaciones que las grandes potencias, que andan viendo solo que roban de los secretos de los demás.
A man whose experiences have truly revolutionized what we know about the UFO phenomenon as a whole, and particularly what we know about a group within the military-industrial complex that has colonized space and has extensively built out a vast amount of habitation in our solar system for the purposes of industrial growth and trade with a wide variety of extraterrestrial civilizations. Would you agree with that?
They did not feel that anything could stop them. Their allies in the realm of the ETs and the etheric world were too strong. Their gods were at their back, and we were just useless eaters that were throwaways, and there was no stopping them. And after a lot of information was released about the Mars slave colonies, that was a major PR headache for the cabal and the ICC. Well, at this point, they already know that a large percent of very high-ranking cabal, secret Earth government, and secret Earth government syndicate members had defected with a large of information similar to what Snowden had, and they were joining the alliance, the Secret Space Program Alliance, and agreeing at some point to testify against them. And pretty much they were seeing that and hearing that there was going to be a giant data dump in the future of all of this information about their crimes against humanity. And a strange offer came up from the ICC through a negotiation that they wanted to prove that things were not so bad on Mars as had been claimed through recent reports that I had released, and others were beginning to talk about on the internet about the slave colonies on Mars, that these people were there on their own free will, that they were happy and that they were doing important work. And I'm challenging you now out there, those who are out there, start coming forward. There are plenty of people out there that know a lot of what I've been speaking about. And as I've said in the past, I've watched many in the past that have talked to you even walk right up to the line, stop, and about face, and then disappear out of public. And there are a lot of people that know this information or compartmentalized pieces of this information that can come forward, and I believe will be coming forward with this similar information.
Yeah, and we actually, the first guest that we wanted to have on the show, Disclosure, was Henry Deacon, and I had personally paid for his ticket to fly out here, and then right before he was going to fly out here, he got very severely threatened.
Yes.
And that torched the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So part of perhaps why more people haven't come forward is just the severity of force and coercion that is used to try to stop this from getting out. Because I've spoken to several other people that know a lot of the same things that you know, and none of them wanted to come forward.
It's time.
So the ICC is not just presenting this for you and your readers on the internet. They're anticipating that you're like the first pebble of an avalanche that's going to hit them, and they want to do this show for the Alliance as a whole.
Right. And this was in anticipation also of these data dumps, and they're wanting to start putting a spin on the situation.
And just to recap that, in case somebody missed that episode, you said the NSA was hacking all the space program stuff. They were...
Well, what Snowden had gotten his hands on, the NSA had made one of the cardinal mistakes of putting all their eggs in one basket. And they were overconfident, and they had all types of information they were using to blackmail politicians and people all over the world, and they had secret space program information, all highly encrypted. Snowden got a hold of that and booked it out of the U.S., and the information he had been sending over satellites for some time. He didn't just have a small hard drive in his back pocket when he fled. It was tons, terabytes and terabytes of info.
All the same thing.
All of that has now been fully decrypted very recently.
As in June 2015, thereabouts?
Yeah, just very recently. So all of that is, they're still going through it. It's just recently been decrypted. And then we have all this tons and tons more other information in these recent hacks that people have heard a little bit about. And so this is the information that the ICC is worried about. And this gets us to why they offered to have a sort of like a NATO-type inspection of one of their colonies of our choice on Mars to inspect the living conditions of the colonists.
How many colonies on Mars are you aware of there being?
There are dozens of colonies, facilities, and industrial plants that build technologies, and a lot of these colonies are in the outskirts of these plants, and the people are shuttled to them to work. And
well, I guess it would make sense if you have a whole planet that there would be dozens of facilities on the planet.
Right. And it was one of these types of facilities that we were taken to do an inspection of. And I saw the ICC representative standing there, and there were a bunch of the Secret Space Program councilmen standing there, basically, wishing a good mission, hoping all of this was a success,
So
political kind of talk.
The ICC chairman, is that an extraterrestrial? Is that a reptilian or something?
No, this was a human being. He was an ICC councilman, like a high up.
So what did he look like? Could you describe him?
Yeah, he had gray hair, grayish, white hair. Was not a real stocky guy. Was wearing one of those suits that I've described.
Like the Nehru jacket?
Yeah, Nehru, like India kind of. I don't know why those are so popular, but that seems to have become the thing to wear for the people in power. So we get on to what I've described. They come in different sizes, between 40 and 60 feet long shuttle craft, and they're modular on the inside. I've seen them changed out for all different types of uses, including troop transport, medical. This one was set up, obviously, for VIP situation. It had enough seats for all of us, and once we sat in the seats, and I have a very long report online about this. I'm abbreviating it for this show. Gonzalez was doing most of the talking. He is an impeccable politician, and I mean he has all these skills of dealing with these types of people. I had been out of the loop. I was really listening to see if I was going to get more information than I'd been given. Before I knew it, we had stopped outside of, pretty far outside of the Mars orbit. We were stopped, and when we did, a giant, almost, I would estimate about 70-inch diagonally panel came down. It was one of the larger versions of like the smart glass pads, and a three-dimensional image of Mars appeared, and all these different icons started appearing to where there were these Mars bases. And
how many icons were there?
I can't remember now. There were quite a few, at least a dozen. Okay. There were a large number, and we were only seeing one side of Mars at this point.
Were they in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere?
These were all up in the northern hemisphere.
Oh.
But this ICC guy started pointing to the different ones, saying, making recommendations of ones we should visit. And this time, Gonzalez said, well, wait a second. And he didn't touch anything. I guess he had some sort of mental component way of activating this new icon down in the southern hemisphere. And when he did, the ICC representative immediately kind of straightened up and was disturbed. And Gonzalez said, we've chosen this facility. And the ICC representative was obviously a complete politician. He very quickly on his feet said, this is not a working facility. It doesn't have a colony. It's a old, I think he was saying it was like an automated facility. It's not something you'd be interested in, playing it down. And Gonzalez immediately said, well, one of our recent defectors lived on this colony, and we have very fresh and detailed intelligence about this facility. This is the one we want to visit. And
I bet that's going to throw him into a panic.
He was concerned. The ICC representative was concerned. And he excused himself to go back into one of the modular rooms, and apparently he had some sort of communication device or way to communicate. And he said he had to get it cleared. And he appeared a few minutes later and said that it was going to be approved, but it was going to take about an hour to have everything cleared and the airspace cleared and have it all worked out. Obviously time for them to clean up the base and make arrangements. So approximately 50 minutes later, one of the crews said, "We're cleared for landing," and off we go. As we entered the atmosphere, we saw outside the clear panels pink and lavender, purple discharges around the shielding, and we flew real quickly towards the ground, which was exhilarating, and then cut real hard and started flying along the surface into what looked like used to be part of a river water feature, and there was a sort of a cliff wall, kind of like a cliff wall, and out of it came a cylinder, rose up, that was
metallic?
Yes, that was basically air traffic control. And then an opening opened up, and that wasn't visible before, in the side of the canyon type wall. We slowed down, flew inside. As we flew inside, there were bays on each side, and on each side there were two craft on either side of a catwalk that I hadn't seen before, that were somewhat teardrop shaped and chrome colored. And I believe it was the third bay on the right, we were apparently cleared to land, and there was one of the teardrop shaped vessels, and then a kind of a large circular area for us to land, which our craft barely fit on. And we landed. The ICC representative got out of our craft and jogged, half running, half walking, to the security people that met him, went and to the security checkpoint, and then came back running, doing this, that everything was okay. And Gonzalez and I had two security personnel that were IEs assigned to each of us that were allowed to carry firearms. We disembarked, we headed to the checkpoint. The security at the station told our security, no weapons past this point. There was an exchange between Gonzalez and the ICC representative that, this was supposed to be already a part of the deal. The ICC representative went and talked to what was the leader of the facility. The leader of the facility scowled and did this to motion us through, and we entered into the base, and there was no one present. And he said that the main hall was being prepared for the presentation, and the rest of the ICC personnel were on their way. They'd been informed of the location, and that we were going to be sent first to the industrial complex to see where a certain component was produced. And then they put us on a train, a small train, that was very narrow and was two people across, to where we sat across from each other just like this. And the way we entered in, there were quite a few of the colony's security personnel that were accompanying us. And I had one of my security on each side of me, and across from me were 5 of the colony's security. And as we were heading down very quickly, it was about 8 kilometers, I think I heard them say, to the industrial complex, I was asked where I was from, and I made the mistake of saying Texas. Well, I left out before we were told that as we had landed, before we had entered into the checkpoint, the ICC representative told us, listen, this particular base is a part of a social experiment that's very important to humanity. Please don't contaminate it. They were told that Earth was uninhabitable from some sort of catastrophe or something, and that the only people, human beings, that survived were those on Mars and in the space program. So I had pretty much messed up. And
wow.
Because I was recently sunburned, and I had put on aloe and all kinds of stuff. I reeked of Earth, I was told.
Do they all use similar
yeah,
hygiene products?
They used all the exact same hygiene products. Gonzalez told me later on, my deodorant, the lotions I used, the hair gel, everything, I totally smelled alien.
So what happened on this guy's face when you say Texas and he thinks that the Earth has been destroyed?
Well, the few in front of me immediately were like, and they looked at each other, and they immediately started talking amongst themselves. And then my security guy and the other security guy next to him started talking, and next thing I know, I see Gonzalez's head poke out and his head crane over and look in my direction, and I didn't even look at him. I just looked past the security guys and watched the blurry wall going by out the window until we stopped. And then we got out to begin the tour of the facility.
What did Gonzalez, when he looked at you, what was the...
I didn't look at him. But he approached me very quickly afterwards, and, he said that he was thinking, how he could salvage the situation. He was going to try to think of Texas being a secret facility or a secret vessel or something like that to try to save the situation.
Do you think they were shown some sort of fake Hollywood-style movie?
Who knows?
Okay.
But what I do know
they believed it absolutely.
Yes. What I do know is that many of these people, especially during the brain drain era and a little after, were being brought in, coerced to join these Mars colonies, being told that the Earth was about to go through a catastrophe, that they were the best of the best, they were special, and they were a part of a continuity of preservation of the human species program to basically colonize Mars and eventually terraform Mars and restart the human race.
People who are millennials and have grown up buried in texting and smartphones may not realize how much of a threat people from yours and my generation and then our parents' generation really believed there was going to be a nuclear war. I mean, it was a very frightening, scary thing.
Oh, yeah. I remember we both were at the age to where duck and cover, get under your desk.
As if that's going to do anything.
Right.
So do you think that they may have been told that there had been a nuclear war since there was so much fear that it was going to happen?
I don't know what they were told. If it was a solar event, a war, or a supervolcano, who knows?
But what a great way to keep people from wanting to escape. Because that's their home. They got nowhere else to go.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
did these folks in this particular colony or these other colonies have contact with different extraterrestrial races, or were they predominantly by themselves as humans from Earth?
Some of them definitely worked with different ET races and solved different ET races.
Okay.
A lot of these bases were doing commerce with ET races, so I'm assuming so, but I'm not positive.
I know that you didn't live there, but I'm curious if people had, for example, a sub-shuttle system similar to what they have on Earth so they could travel throughout all these different bases and colonies? Was there like an internet on Mars that they could all access? Did they have the ability to talk to people in different facilities?
No, I didn't explain the train system very well. It was almost like vitrified rock, and it was rippled like glass.
That is exactly what I've heard from at least 2 other insiders.
Okay. And
they have these boring machines that use some kind of nuclear energy, and they drive forward and they melt the rock, but then they have to stop and create a little ring, because if you just go straight through, then it'll crack and dirt falls in. They stop it periodically, make these little rings that reinforce the strength of the tunnel.
It was like rippled.
There you go. Okay, perfect.
And there were sections where we went, as we were going along, there were cross tunnels, and they had connections to other facilities to where they would bring in parts, and so they were connected to other facilities to where they could bring in parts or whatever else they needed.
Do they have any contact with each other on the planet?
They have limited contact with each other, it appears.
Only high-ranking people, not the rank-and-file staff?
It's, I would say, need to know kind of situation.
So they're living a very isolated life. It's not like they have a big social circle. Or
very regimented life.
So what happens next?
So we're starting to begin the tour. There was this one colonist that was there that was showing a completed curved component that was a neurological optical interface that was real popular, used to be used in different craft. And
what would that actually do? It's optical and neurological?
Yeah.
Does it track the movement of your eye or something?
Well, no. If it's through other technology, you neurologically interface it, and it interfaces other technology and gives some sort of optical display or something. We were really just starting to get, we're really about to get started. The machinery the robotic automated machinery that builds it, they were talking about the different shapes. Some are curved, some are straight.
Is this like a helmet that you wear?
No, it's like something that goes into a vessel.
Oh.
And we were just starting this when, and the train had left after we had gotten out. And
this is the industrial part of the tour they said you were going to get.
Right.
Were there a lot of people around?
No. At this time, there was just this one colonist that was apparently like a foreman kind of a guy that was there to give us a talk.
Okay.
And the ICC guy, representative, kept touching his ear, and was scowling, looked concerned, and was kind of standing back.
Oh, you're saying it's like an earpiece.
Right.
Not that he was trying to non-verbally signal to the colonist guy.
Like an earwig is kind of, they put them in your ear,
right,
and you can hear and you can talk, but it's not easy to see.
Okay, so he's got his own little earwig.
Right. And the facility security team was more and more looking at us, talking amongst themselves. It was obvious that they were chattering amongst themselves.
Because of the Texas thing.
Because of the Texas comment. And
you smell funny, look funny.
And I had a sunburn, I was peeling, even my scalp was peeling. I just had a haircut, I'd been in the sun, and I had put aloe vera all over myself to, And another train arrived, and a whole, like double the size, a huge amount of security came out and came and disarmed all of their own security team that had accompanied us. And the ICC representative came and told us that we needed to be very careful what we talked about, and to remember the agreement.
Were they worried that the guy that you said Texas to was going to frag and shoot you? Is that why him and his team were disarmed, because they were worried about some sort of psychological break?
Well, the way they were putting it across to us was that we had contaminated their social experiment. And then half of the new security group escorted the old security facility group into the train and left. And shortly later, the train came back. We got in it and headed back because they said that the main hall had been set up and that the ICC representatives had arrived and were ready for the presentation. So we headed back, and when we arrived back this time, there were people everywhere, where before it was just noticeably empty. And in these places, you use every square foot of space. So to have a huge area like that with no one around was unusual. Well, all of a sudden now there are all these colonists, and they were obviously wearing their Sunday's best. Some of them wearing all different types of one pieces. Some of them wearing some khakis and blues and all different colors. Some of them actually wearing two-piece types of clothing, and they were all doing their work, but they were all trying to make eye contact with us. It was kind of obvious that they had been told that a part of the deal was that we were going to be allowed to bring one family back with us to question about the conditions of the facility. So they were kind of just like hopefully like trying to make eye contact with us.
Sort of like going into a dog and cat shelter.
Right.
Wow.
So
so sad.
There were two different parts. We got to do a tour of where the people lived and see their small quarters where the people were smiling and looking all happy. And
could you describe one of these quarters just briefly for us? Like, do they have a place where they cook? Do they have a bathroom? Do they have different bedrooms?
They were like jail cells.
Really?
Yeah. They had into the walls. They had beds, and they did not prepare their food there. They all went to one central location to eat. And they went to one central location to go to the bathroom and to bathe and all that, or shared locations for groups.
Did they have a toilet in the room even?
No.
Wow.
It was.
But there's no bars on the door. It's
no.
Like they can come and go if they want to.
Right. But I'm sure.
How big was the hallway?
The hallway was fairly wide. I mean, it was big enough for probably 6 people side by side.
But is it just like rooms like this all the way down?
It was just rooms like this, rooms like that all around.
No windows or anything?
No windows.
Did they have light like floor lamps or ceiling mounted light, or how did it light?
There's a type of sonic lighting that they have.
Sonic lighting?
Yeah, it's pretty common. It's sound waves that produce light.
Where are they?
On the ceiling.
Is it one area of the ceiling, or like the whole ceiling just glows?
The panels of the ceiling, the whole ceiling.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so Gonzalez made a mental note of the, I guess, the habitation number or address of one of the places, unbeknownst to me. We also went to what Gonzalez referred to as a dog and pony show that the ICC put on. What they were calling the main hall or this gathering place looked very much like a place where people were brought in and fed propaganda.
Did you get an intuitive feeling of that?
Yes. It had been set up with chairs around, and there was another one of those very large smart glass type of screens.
So it's like an auditorium where a bunch of people
Yes,
could be.
it was a very large auditorium.
Did they have something like TV in their houses? Was there anything they could watch?
Mm-mm.
Really?
Not that I saw, not unless it's retractable.
Okay.
We go in, some introductions are made, we sit down, and they give a dog and pony show. They start to show us all these different technologies that they barter and trade and sell basically to ETs.
Is the ICC representative giving you the presentation at this point, or does he have colleagues that are also working with him?
Different colleagues, yeah, they're giving different guys, they're giving presentations. They're very proud of what they're presenting. There were different craft, different components of craft, different just small they're presenting just a whole lot of different technologies, from the micro to the full product.
Was there anything that really jumped out that surprised you that you didn't know existed, or that was really kind of cool, unusual, unexpected?
Well, the fact that, not really, other than the fact that there were actual vessels that we were engineering and building that advanced extraterrestrial groups were interested in procuring from us. I mean, we had come this far in producing advanced technology that other groups wanted it. One of the things that jumped out at me the most was the fact that one of the ICC representatives announced that we were doing trade on a regular basis with nearly 900 ET races. And
that's astonishing.
And that was on a regular basis, and that we were occasionally doing trade with far more.
Far more as in thousands?
Right.
Did they give any sense of how much of the galaxy this covers? Is it just a small area?
No. I'm not exactly sure where all these groups come from, but considering that just outside of our solar system is a major hub as far as a portal system that travels through the cosmic web of portal systems. This is like an oasis stopover. We see a lot of traffic through the area. Most groups don't stop by our solar system because it's seen as very messy. Well, with the slavery going on and all that, most of them don't want to deal with us. They stay outside of our solar system, they do their calculations, and they go. But the ones that are amoral or don't have a problem with it come and do trade with the ICC.
By the time you saw this dog and pony show, had you already been told that these technologies were all going to be handed to humanity after this big disclosure takes place?
Right. We had already been told that the Secret Space Program Alliance was told to stop any attacks, no longer attack the ICC infrastructure, to stop the violence. They were already having problems swallowing the be more loving, be more forgiving, raise your consciousness, and all of this stuff to them was just, totally foreign information. But they were told to stop all the violence, and they did. Especially after they found out that all of this infrastructure, after the great disclosure events and people had dealt with certain things on Earth, all of this infrastructure was going to be handed over to humanity to be the foundation of a Star Trek type civilization.
Which sounds exactly like what so many ancient cultures and modern channeling traditions all say, is this big epic golden age that we move into.
Right.
So this is a very interesting practical realization of that.
Right. And the Sphere Being Alliance was saying, quit wrecking things, quit destroying all the infrastructure. You're tearing up stuff that after all of these changes happen are going to be handed over to the people.
Wow. Was it a surprise to Gonzalez or others that were part of his detachment that there were 900 groups that were in, as you said, constant trade with the ICC, or did they already all know that?
I seem to be the one that was the most surprised. I usually seem to be the one that's most in the dark about everything in every situation. I do not get all of the intelligence that all of the SSP Alliance members get.
So in the time that we have remaining, there was obviously some very unpleasant stuff that happens to you after this. So how do we get from you being in this room to where all that starts to take place?
Okay, after this, to abbreviate it, after this point, we now are allowed to choose a family to go with us. Gonzalez gives the address on the wall of the family that he had chosen. And the intuitive empaths earlier had stated something didn't feel right when we were in the train coming back. And I felt something was off, but I'm not as in tune as I used to be. Then once the family was had been escorted onto our vessel, once we had seen the family, the intuitive empaths were whispering to Gonzalez, and he was like, And we got onto the vessel, the door closed, and he said, "You're safe, everything's going to be okay, you can tell us, we know that there's a member of your family missing." And it was a husband, a wife, and a son, and a daughter. And the father was like, "How could you possibly know that?" And he said, these gentlemen have abilities, and just tell us what's going on, and we'll straighten it out. And then the family clammed up. And Gonzalez got, in his normal way, he got very ticked off, and him and his two security personnel left the craft.
So they must have told the family, you tell them that this is a wonderful place to live and everything's happy, or else your kid gets it.
And that you want to come back. Because part of the deal was we were able to offer them a place. Sanctuary, yeah.
Okay.
So Gonzalez left, and long story short, next thing I know, the crew comes out of the crew compartment at the front saying, "We have security personnel coming in fast, weapons at the ready, what do we do?" And they're asking me.
So you're in this ship that you're about to leave with this family with.
Mm-hmm.
Gonzalez is trying to get their other kid.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys come in running with weapons drawn, and they're basically like assaulting your craft, it appears.
They were on their way down.
Wow.
They had rounded the way, and they were on their way up the catwalk. And I said, "Is Gonzalez with them?" And they said, "He's nowhere to be seen." And I said, "Stand down, open the door." And they immediately started taking security steps to wipe all the intelligence information that would aid the enemy, I guess, out of the craft.
Wow.
So they did that very quickly, and the security team came, disarmed our security.
Were they yelling at you, and like, did they put your hands behind your back and hurt you?
They escorted us in a very brisk, rough way, but they weren't, trying to break our arms or anything.
Okay.
They escorted us back past the security point, and As we went in, the ICC representative that had been with us before was in a yelling match with the facility leader. And the ICC representative outranked this facility leader by a lot. But this guy was ticked off.
The facility leader?
Facility leader was upset. And we were walked to this wall, and there were now doors where there were not doors before. And they opened the doors, and there's a detention facility. And we walk in, and there are people in there are all these people in cells. And these are cells they're almost like cages that you can put your hands in like this, with like octagonal kind of holes. And they walk us all the way back. All of them have people in them. And in the very back is a larger cell with Gonzalez and his two people, and with his two intuitive empath guards. And they put the rest of us in, including the crew of the craft. And Gonzalez said that the facility leader was a tyrant and couldn't handle being challenged in front of his own people, that things had gotten heated and out of control, and they were detained. And he said things sounded like they were going to go very, very badly. And
meaning you guys were going to be held for a short while and then murdered?
It sounded like things were going to go in that manner.
Or tortured first and then murdered.
Who knows? Yeah. He didn't elaborate.
Some of this information is going to be enlightening. Some of it's going to really bother you. And I'm sorry to be the one to have to tell you that we have a very serious problem on our hands. And it involves extraterrestrials who are interested in us as souls. But there definitely is a battle of good and evil going on out there, and part of it has to do with us and our solar system because of its location and the minerals that are here. The regressives, and we're going to talk a little bit about that after I show you the moon pictures, don't give a damn about us. We are a natural resource. Okay? Be really clear when I say this. We are a natural resource to them. They don't care who you are inside. They don't care. The government believes truth to be a lie undiscovered. But that's really where it's at. That's really where it's at. That is a true enactment, folks. Now I'm going to show you some of the things that are there. Now, so you may have trouble adjusting your eyes to seeing some of this. Some of the things you will not have any trouble whatsoever. These photographs, I was told specifically where to look. They show so much. I mean, if you know what you're looking for, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You know, and there's no way our astronauts miss this stuff. There's just no way. You know, 21-mile bridges, 7-mile monuments, ships sitting in the middle of craters. I mean, you know, you're going to see it. Okay? Moldak was the first inhabited planet in our solar system that was very much like Earth. Mars and our planet were terraformed from Moldak, or Molona, or whatever name you want to call it. It was terraformed. In other words, all the plant life and everything that is on the surface and animal life was brought here. It was brought here. Our solar system has been engineered, built and engineered. Okay? The whole solar system. You know, I'm not asking you to believe this. I'm sharing information with you. If you choose not to believe it, hey, that's fine. I ask you to exercise your free will. Lights, please. There we go. Okay. Our galaxy. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the Andromedans, space travel has existed in our galaxy for 4.4 billion years. Okay, we are literally the new kids on the block. All right? Now,
interesting about our galaxy is the fact that we have many different races living here. In particular, the human race, which we are a member of, and what we call the reptilian races, which we are not a part of, but who very much don't like us, like the human race. Apparently this battle that's been going on has been going on for approximately 3.8 billion years between reptilian races and human races. Many of the races that exist in our galaxy migrated originally from Lyra during a war. Apparently, sometime in our ancient past, a group of reptilians were exploring, looking for minerals, looking for food resources. They came across a star system that was full of human beings who were agricultural in their nature. Abundant food, they just had everything together. And the reptilian races, they're called the Seekar. In the Andromedan tongue, we know them, or we would know them as being known as the Draconans, because they're from Alpha Draconis. And apparently they, as a race, were brought to our galaxy fully formed. Nobody knows where they came from or who dumped them there. But they were put there because it gave them the highest probability of survival. Well, they're a remarkable race. They're incredible builders, but they have an attitude problem. And that is that they believe that they are the dominant species and they control everything else. And they are also master geneticists. They value genetics, not gold or silver. They have no interest in that. It's life forms. And they try to control life forms through manipulating their genetics. We have also been subject to that. I'm going to try to cover a lot here. Anyway, there was a war. They were attacked. Many of the human races fled to Antares, to the Pleiades, to Cygnus Alpha, to Andromeda, to Cassiopeia, to Sirius, to Procyon, all over. They just scattered to the winds, trying to survive. Next slide, please. This is where our small little area is located. That which we see in the sky, this is where it's located. As you can see, we are in the sticks, the boonies. We really are. And this is why we've been manipulated and messed with so much as a planet and as a race. Because we have been, for the most part, considered insignificant. And then roughly 5,000 years ago, somehow they found out that we were no longer insignificant, and I will tell you why. According to the Andromedans, in our physical form right now, in our genetics, we have within us the DNA of 22 different extraterrestrial races who have come down here and manipulated, who have bred with us, who have tinkered with us, everything imaginable. And that somehow we have all this inside of us. Plus the fact that we're coupled with spirit. And this is something that the Greys have a major problem with. And I will cover that as well. Now, because we are the only race in our galaxy that has these genetics of 22 different races, because we are also spirit, they consider us royalty. The Andromedans consider us as royalty. Now, one of the factors that they look at, and the thing that totally awes them the most, is the fact that many of the more advanced races use technology to create things, to manifest things. The Andromedans are heavily used holographics. Whatever they need, they create holographically. It is physically there, but when they're done with it, they turn off the switch and it's gone. It doesn't just sit there. All right? Like if you go home and your couch, you go away for a year, that couch sits right there. They are amazed at how much energy we put into creating things. Just things. Little tchotchkes that you put on the shelf, books. All those things take an intense amount of energy to create. They're amazed that we have this ability. The other thing that amazes them is they're also amazed at how easily we can allow our own kind to starve to go homeless, and to kill each other. They do not understand that at all. Okay, and destroy our environment. Okay, this is our solar system. There is life in all of these systems surrounding us. They have been coming here for years. For years they've been coming here. Okay, mythology, there's a shred of truth in all of it. The work that Zecharia Sitchin is doing, all the truths, just let them right to it. In fact, there's more truth that the aliens are out there than they aren't. They just don't want you to know because they don't want you to know who you are. Because the minute we wake up, the game's over. They cannot control us. And if you look at our past history, if you read Zecharia Sitchin's books, we as a race, when we stand together, rebel against the gods, the ETs. We rebel because they have been, pardon my French, shitting on us for thousands and thousands and thousands of years and holding us back. Next slide, please. Okay, here's Earth. If we can just get a focus, Lisa. This is what's left of Maldek. You know, the series of planets. The moon is not the only artificial. There are 9 artificial moons in our solar system, and I will share with you later what those are. I just want to cover a lot of information. Okay, next slide. Okay, our moon. Our moon is quite the enigma. Apparently our moon was brought here 11,213 years ago, to be exact, in the month of March, that we know is the month of March. It came here as a base, okay, as a ship carrying ETs. They were coming here to colonize. They did in fact colonize. In fact, many of what's left of them are living underground in our planet from 100 miles to 200 miles beneath the surface. Now, I've gotten a lot of crap for talking about this, but I'm just not going to shut up. The beings that brought this satellite here to our planet in the last 25 years are responsible for over 31,000 children disappearing from the surface. And I don't know if you're paying attention, but over 100,000 children a year are vanishing from the face of the earth. And folks, they're being taken out of here. And the governments know. The world governments know. All right, and we're going to cover that. We're going to cover that. Next slide, please. Mornay has told me that the United States government, just our government, has at least 53 of its own UFOs, flying saucers, that are stationed on the moon, on the far side. And I'm going to show you where he says they are. It's in one of the slides. They did, but they were told to shut up, not say anything. Many astronomers who have been taking a look at the moon, many of the lunar rovers and the cars that they drove have disappeared. They're no longer there. Well, they just didn't get up and float away. Okay, the moon has got gravity. Especially on the far side, it's got gravity. Because again, it is not the rotation. It is apparently the sunlight. The sun's radiation that creates gravity. This is what they say. Now, our moon does not turn on its axis. It rotates around the Earth, but we primarily just see one side, or only 59% of it. By the way, our moon's the only one that does that. It's the only one. Next slide, please. Okay, this was taken out of National Geographic. This was in the early 1950s. This was NASA's idea of what moon bases would look like. They, in fact, did do this and create this in February of 1958. So when Kennedy said, we are going to send man to the moon, part of our government, primarily the NSA, was already there. They were already there. They work for international bankers who are the new priesthoods for extraterrestrials. And we're going to cover that. Next slide, please. Okay. According to the Andromedans, there were primarily 9 huge domed cities on the moon, the front and the back. They housed up to 5 million extraterrestrials at one time. There was water, there was vegetation, there was everything they needed. Okay, and these covered hundreds of miles. You know, so when Richard shows you the pictures of the things, you know, the shards, so many miles tall, 9, 10, 15 miles, whatever it is, he's right. He's absolutely right. You know, but there's more. There's more. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is along the equator on the far side of the moon. This is what's left of a pyramid. There are 4 pyramids on the moon. Excuse me. Okay, now I can assure you that the pharaohs, just to practice, did not take the Hebrew or the ivory up here, build one, then bring it back and do it right in Egypt. Didn't happen. According to the Andromedans, almost all the planets in our solar system have pyramids on it. Some have more. I've asked why. Some people say they're tombs. The Andromedan perspective is that these are weights. And what they do is you put them in a strategic location, it balances the rotation of the planet. It doesn't keep it from wobbling, which means that if the ETs are there colonizing, there's no major fluctuations in weather and gravity. Gravity anomalies as well as the electromagnetic field, which is around every single planet. It has to be balanced. That's what these are for. That's why Giza is directly dead center of the landmass on planet Earth. Next slide, please. This area here is a base that was built by the United States, the Russians, and the British with the help of bankers, using technology that was given to this elite, this ruling family, by the Greys in 1954. They've been up here a long time, and this is actually considered a resort. This is not Club Med. Next slide. This was the photographer. Let's go one more slide. Ladies and gentlemen, somebody else, I think George Leonard wrote this, somebody else is on the moon.
George Leonard, yeah.
George Leonard. Somebody else is absolutely living on the moon. I am told that there are 35,000 full-time human beings from Earth living on the moon. And they are Aryans by birth. Now, let me just say that one more time. They are Aryans. Now, let me just say that one more time. They are Aryans by birth. They are Aryans by birth. They're also there with extraterrestrials. Between the moon and our Earth, there are 18,000 Greys here. There are only apparently 2,000 real Greys left. All the rest are clones. They're robots. They're organic robots. And microprocessors are grown in their head. And they're controlled by some kind of a radio frequency. Now, the Greys and the Orions also have this technology to absolutely replicate and duplicate a human being. It's extraterrestrials who are doing it, who are trying to undermine the free will of those of us on the surface of the planet. Because this is our home. Okay, Mars. I'm still working on more information, but I'm going to show you a couple things and share things that I've been told about Mars. The first thing I want to share with you about Mars is that, again, everything we've been told about it is wrong. Mars' atmosphere is full of oxygen and ozone. In fact, the local San Diego paper on March 23rd of 1995 flat out said that in 1971 they had discovered it was full of ozone. Well, folks, you go to the library and you pull out any book that you can find on Mars, written by any scientist on this planet, and they don't say virtually anything about ozone. But it's there. We're told that that its actual gravity is about 1%. Well, if the atmosphere is so feeble, then how is it that it can have 300-mile-an-hour wind storms? If the atmosphere is so feeble, how is it that it can hold water at both poles? Next slide. Let's go next slide. I'm sorry. At both poles. And there's water at both poles. This is water, H2O. We're told that the Martian atmosphere never gets above 129 degrees below zero. And yet, this past February or March, you had a picture from the Hubble telescope of Mars and the North Polar Cap melting. Now, I'm not a scientist, but tell me, how does water melt at 129 degrees below zero? Apparently Mars has been inhabited off and on as a base, as a small colony, as a staging point for extraterrestrials who are exploring and leaving our galaxy to go to another for 3.8 billion years. The ruins that Richard shows and other people, this is what I'm told, that they're tombs, and that there's far more there than's being shown. Most of it's been buried, because during a war previous 69 million years ago, Mars was almost exactly like Earth. That many of the animal life that was on Mars is on Earth. We will find that there were dinosaurs. Many of the exact same animals and mammals and reptiles were on both our worlds. And that Mars had a totally different orbit. It was literally pulled from its orbit, and as it was pulled from its orbit by 19 million miles, it rolled like a ball 3 times. And the water that was here just moved everything. And that it's been reactivated. It was reactivated in 1989. I've been talking about this information for several years now. And I was told that in 1989, Orion troops landed on Mars and took over colonies that were settled, created there by Terrans, us, by human beings from Earth. They came in and just took it over. Now, folks, I got to share this with you. The beings that are here from Orion, they're into control. They're into control. There is no such thing as self-rule in the Orion Empire. There is a hierarchy. Now, if you look at our planet, if you really look at what's going on our planet right now, there's only one nation that truly cherishes self-rule and actually has real experience in self-rule. That's the U.S. And we're armed to the hilt because our Constitution says we can be. This is why the focus is on destroying the United States of America. Okay, the UN, the World Order, all of that stuff, they're all taking orders from ETs, and they're scared to death. But they're willing to sacrifice this nation. They're willing to kill 3.5 to 4 billion people to maintain their place as the new priesthoods. This is Sumeria, this is Egypt all over again, but on a much grander scale. Because now you've got 6 billion people living here. If the people of this nation surrender the Bill of Rights by 1998, folks, you will no longer have the United States of America. That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee. This is the reason the Andromedans are coming back. Because 317 years into our future, our galaxy is in tyranny. And they have traced, through time travel, all the events that lead to the single point that shifted the energy from free to tyranny. Now, we're not just talking about free, we're talking also on a spiritual level. Suppression, oppression of soul, of spirit. And they have traced it all back to our solar system, which is why many races are coming back and then saying, hey, wait, this isn't going to work. Because 317 years in our future, there's tyranny here. There is no such thing as freedom. You all know about the face, or most of you I'm sure do. There is a lot more in this area that needs to be explored, of not the face, but go north, where the mountains are. Okay? There are ruins everywhere. There are domes collapsed on top of themselves. In fact, there's one that's still there with the opening in the middle. It's there. It's there. Next slide. But it is important because it all matches up. So, the whole thing is a conspiracy within a conspiracy within a conspiracy, and it is all to keep keep us fat, dumb, and stupid. Not to spook the herd, as a friend of mine said. Because they fear us. They fear us. Because if we stand together and we ask for benevolent help, folks, it's going to be there. In fact, I've been told that the Andromeda Council has already decided to directly intervene, but I don't know what that is. I can tell you this, that the Pleiadians are at full-fledged war with the Greys outside our solar system. They're dying on both sides. This is going on, and the Hubble telescope sees it, and there are 2 Hubble telescopes, not 1. The Russians sent 1 up. But you're not being told about that. Next slide, please. Olympus Mons, 15 miles high. 1979, NASA admitted that they saw water vapor and ice clouds going over it. That's 90,000 feet. Okay, that's higher than the clouds on our planet. Now we're told that the circumference of Mars is 4,200 feet. The Andromedans say, wrong. They say it's 11,230 miles. It's 3 times the size we're being told it is. The Andromedans also say that if you look at the planets in your solar system, and you look at the brightness of those planets, that is proof that we live in a binary star system. They say we have 2 suns. But because of the rotation and the position of our planet, we never see the sister. But if you're on Venus, Mercury, or the others, you would see it. They rotate around each other. I realize it flies in the face of everything. I'm just here sharing with you, and I'm just asking you to keep an open mind. Next slide, please. Okay. Cydonia is in the northern hemisphere. Now I'm told that at one time most of that area was covered with water. And that along the equator of Mars is where most of the colonial cities were, colonies, outposts. They said most of the bigger cities on Mars before it was destroyed was in the southern hemisphere. I want you to focus on this area right in here. Now this area is known as Our Great Plantatia. This is in the southern hemisphere. Okay, but if we go to the next slide. This apparently is another tomb that was in fact destroyed. And these are 3 more pyramids that are lined up just like Giza. This area right here. And that these are also ruins. This is what they say. And folks, they've never lied to me. Right here. They want us desperately to wake up. Now they have their own selfish reasons. Okay, because of the fact of the problems that apparently come up in the future. But there's also another reason. Many of the human races in our galaxy, because of so much interbreeding between the one race, the genetics apparently are starting to break down. There's only one race in our galaxy that can give these particular human races a genetic boost. And that's us. But they can't use our genetics. They can't even approach us because of the vibration we all move at, which is fear and anger. They say when we're not taking advantage of others, we're taking advantage of ourselves. It hasn't stopped the regressives because they vibrate at this frequency, and they've also helped to propagate many of the belief systems that we have right now. And official protocol ships from Orion are going to be here. Now, I want to share with you some of the things that the Greys are up to. Many people say they've left. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but apparently they're still here, and they have no intentions of leaving because they need us. They are desperately trying to save their race by using our genetics, but it isn't working. They can create the form, but they can't put soul in the body. That's a gift. Now, here's what they're doing. This is what I'm told they're doing. I'm told that many of the abductions that are occurring now, that the vital body, the aura of the people being abducted, which is primarily the females in a family, and it's usually the first and second daughter and the mother. What they're doing is they're peeling off the vital body, the closest part to the energy field, and they are storing it and they are feeding it to the hybrids that have that mother's genetics in it. And apparently they're doing this to keep them alive. And they're also apparently trying to create soul. They think by stealing your aura, the vital body, in your energy field, and giving it to another, that it will create soul. You need to be aware of this. Okay, this is why a lot of folks who are weird things are happening, they're getting real sick and run down, is because your vital life force is being stripped from you. And folks, there is a violation of free will, big time going on here. You know, there are a lot of lines in metaphysics, and one of them says that you create your own reality. Well, that's true, but there is a violation of free will, and we are being violated big time. And our race has been for the last 5,400 years. Big time. I'm dealing with the race we know ourselves now as Homo sapiens sapien. I don't know, is there another slide? Phobos. Phobos is an artificial moon. This is where majority of the 2,000 real graves that are left are hiding out, is on Phobos. And when you look at pictures of Phobos, when you go through your magazines or you go through, the astronomy magazines, I'm told that you should, I've been asked to share with you the idea that you should look very carefully about the inside of craters. That many of the openings that lead into this are inside the craters, that the bottoms open up and the ships come in and the ships come out. Okay? Now, Phobos is a major anomaly because it goes counterclockwise to everything else in our solar system. It rotates counterclockwise to everything else. Let's see, there's one more. Okay, this is the North Pole of Jupiter. This is a photograph taken by the Voyager. The Galileo. Does anybody care to tell me what that might be? I don't know either. Yes, that's the North Pole. And it went over, it photographed this sitting there. This is Ganymede. Ganymede's another artificial satellite. Ganymede has life on it, has water, has an atmosphere, has oxygen. Many of the benevolent races use this as a base. This is Ganymede. Has an atmosphere, has oxygen. Many of the benevolent races use this as a base. This is Ganymede. I'm sorry? That's Jupiter. It's one of the moons of Jupiter. Now, if you look carefully at the satellite we just sent up there, and you look at the rotation of what it's focusing on, the moons that it's focusing on will tell you an awful lot about what it is that they're looking for. They do nothing without a reason. And okay, next slide, please.
If most of those satellites are artificially made, why do they make the surface so rough?
The question is, if the satellites or the moons are artificially created, why do they make the surfaces so rough? Obviously, to hide what they are. Other than that, I don't know.
Yes, we really have a struggle going on between basically good and evil. Are the benevolent people more powerful, or is there more of them? I mean, do we really have a chance?
Okay. The question is, if there's really a battle between good and evil, are the benevolents more powerful? Do they have more? And do we really have a chance? Oh, gosh. I've been told that if they stuck together, yes, they could resolve the situation here. But there are some significant problems that they have. Now, back in 1985, when I was being told all of this, there were a lot of discussions going on back in Andromeda about what to do with us. Now, half of the Andromedan Council didn't want anything to do with us. And their reasons were this. These were their sole reasons. for not wanting to help us. They don't respect their home, they don't respect each other, and they don't respect themselves. What is their value? Now those that wanted to help, because they have seen us as totally being violated with our free will, somehow convinced them that this was a worthwhile project. Now, intervention not only changes our reality, it changes their reality. And one of the things that the Andromedans and Morine has said specifically is they don't want to come down here and help us when we don't want to help ourselves. Because then they end up babysitting. And if something happens, we could always blame them. And the cycle starts all over again. This is about self-responsibility. That's what this whole thing is about. There are one group of ETs who say, well, there's no way. You cannot be self-responsible. You cannot rule yourselves. And then we were given this opportunity 200 and some odd years ago to try this experiment. And we succeeded in doing it. But now we're being lulled back into a place where we want somebody to take care of us.
Yeah.
And you know that you're going to sacrifice your freedom. I'm not about to do that.
Neither.
So who's going to win? I don't know. I wish I knew. I wish I had a place to hide until it was over, but I don't.
Their interference has caused a lot of this to surface. I mean, they've kind of, changed our direction as to what we might have been able to accomplish.
You're right. The question was, she added, that we've been manipulated and they've helped to change us into a different direction. You're absolutely right. However, when I brought that question up to Mornay, he looked at me and he said, are you aware that your government is drugging its young people? Again, it comes back to self-responsibility. They are watching us. They are watching us and saying, should we come in and help this race when they don't want to clean up their own act, when they don't want to take care of their own? Do you realize, and those who don't want to make a shift are going to be checking out? Because the frequency, everything is changing, folks. And I'm not trying to instill fear in you. I'm trying to share with you what they've told me. And they have not been wrong. Things are going to radically change. And it's going to start just like this. It has. They're going to try to divide us. And because if you divide, you can conquer. And whatever you do, please don't turn on each other. The enemy is underground. They're on the moon. It is not your neighbor. Now, the world government has been told that we're overpopulated, by the aliens. The truth is, they can't control all of us. They can't control us here. So they decide they want to just eliminate half the world's population. Now, folks, I want to share this with you. According to the Andromedans, our planet could comfortably handle a population of 11 billion if we didn't squander our natural resources and we went to free energy.
Right. Yes.
Now, the free energy has been suppressed forever.
Right.
If we went to that, we could turn this whole thing around. All right? What's happened is the political systems have broken down, but they don't want to take responsibility for it because in order to fix it, they have to make us more free. And they're not about to do that. They are not about to relinquish control of you, your money, your assets, because you're a natural resource. So it's easier to create a catastrophe, like a pole shift or something else, biological weapons, and just wipe out half the population. And they're still in charge. And I can assure you that those people that you call your world leaders, those who are part of this game, will be sitting on the moon watching all this happen. And when it's done, they'll come back with answers, just like a politician, You mentioned something about economics, materialism, what have you. How does any of that correlate with your comments about your getting our souls in the place that we think of in terms of metaphysics or religion? How does that fit in? Where does the answers come from? Who could not have a soul? The Greys? The clones that... No, I'm talking about, I'm referring to the clones, the hybrids that they're creating. They do not have soul. That's what I'm told. That's right. They're not actual beings. Microprocessors, organic microprocessors, are grown inside their brains.
These live in their brain and are not living here.
Some of them are not, no.
What about the ones that aren't clones? Do they have souls in their brain?
The ones who are not clones? Yes, they do.
What was that question back there? I still didn't get it.
We got off.
Yeah, where does soul and spirit get into this?
Okay.
It's a possible solution.
Why are they so interested in us? Now this is really going to stretch your belief systems. I am told that a majority of the physical beings, human beings that are in third density, not only on our planet, but in 21 other systems, who are experiencing the same problem we are having, are beings that apparently at some time in our past were at 11th density. Now, the Andromedans have said that our universe, what we know as our universe, is in linear time, and this is the only way that I can explain it is as we count time, is that our universe is a 21 trillion year holograph. It's a holograph. It's a picture within a picture within a picture, or a dream within a dream within a dream, however you want to look at it. And that apparently many of the souls of third density were at 11th density. And for some reason, this collective group consciousness decided they wanted a different perspective. And they literally fell into the concept of time, into physicality, and literally carved out of nothing what we know as third density. Now, third density to many of these other races is like putting your hand in Jell-O and trying to move it back and forth. There's so much resistance, it's so dense. And yet here we are, literally creating all this. That's how powerful we are. That's how powerful our minds are. Which is why there's been so much focus on brainwashing, on trying to make us victims, or believe that we're victims. Because the minute we wake up and we take a step back, detached, and see our situation for what it really is, they've lost control. It ends there the minute we awake. And this is why channeled information, so many different races and beings are trying to light the fire underneath us. Because they can't directly come in and interfere unless a percentage of us ask for permission. Because then it's a violation of free will. And they've done exactly what the regressives have done. Even though it was for our own good. You cannot violate free will. That's the law. So they're trying to help us awaken and at the same time try to make us think it's our idea. That's the trick. And it's working, I think, to a degree. What's basically happening is you've got a planet that is vibrating at a frequency of fear and anger. You've got this new frequency called the 12th density, which is lifting everything up. Well, these really dense energies cannot move up. So the planet herself, in order for her to move up into 5th density, has got to cut loose with this energy. And what's happening is that she's cutting loose with this negativity, which she's been holding on to. It's hitting the surface, and it's feeding us as a population, because we're already in that space. You know, and you know, there are predictions of wars. Oh, God, we're all primed. We're all ready for it. You know, the whole world's broke. Everybody's looking for food. The world has got a food supply of 53 days. The entire world. The United States of America, should there be a catastrophe, has only a 7 days food supply. What happens after those 7 days? Are we going to start feeding off each other? That's our MO. Yes, sir.
Before you go any further, can you define what you mean by density?
Okay, can you define densities, frequencies? Density and dimension, they're really one and the same thing. They are a frequency in which light and sound oscillate at. We oscillate at a specific range. Other things oscillate at other ranges, higher ranges. There really isn't anything lower than us at this present time. You know, we've hit bottom, there's only one place to go, and that's up. as the old saying is. So it's a frequency, it's light, it's sound. If this is a holograph, if what they're saying is right, if this is a 21 trillion year old holograph, then all of this is just light and sound. Now, there are places in space where there is nothing, no matter. According to the Andromedans, those are areas that have not been magnetized by thought. Now, with the first aspect of physicality, the first sign of creation, they say, is the electron. The moment that particle is magnetized by thought, it comes alive, and it starts to create and manifest whatever is energizing it or magnetizing it. I know it's out there. I still have trouble with understanding a lot of it. It is more important to know why you believe something than the fact that you believe it. And in their opinion, the fact that we all believe, or a majority of the people believe in the book of Revelations, that we are literally going to self-fulfill it.
Richard Coco talks about hyperdimensional physics, and through that we can change our reality. So this is really what we're saying, is that if we believe in the book of Revelation, we're created. So wouldn't it be an idea that if we change our thought about the year 2015 as something other than a outline there, and that's sort of what he is saying, is hyperdimensional physics can allow that person to change their reality through their thoughts, and it's basic metaphysics. And that would be eliminating fear, because if we go into ancient fear, we cannot change our thoughts. I don't know, when you said you were afraid, it made me concerned about your information, although I really think your information sounds to me very valid. But when fear can change that reality.
They say that all physical matter that is in this 21 trillion year old holograph came out of what we know as black holes. So the Big Bang Theory is correct in its simplicity. But apparently what happened was some other universes somewhere also went through the process of evolving, and those things that chose not to evolve, to raise their frequency for whatever reason, were taken into black holes, and because spirit cannot be destroyed, it has to create another space to continue to evolve. Now the Andromedans call that space consciousness. They call our universe consciousness, because that's what created it. They say this is happening all over again. And the London Sunday Times on the back, apparently the Hubble telescope has found a floating black hole that is moving through, it's right now in Virgo, it is floating, and it is pulling some suns, some stars into it, but not others. And they're gone. And they're actually watching this thing now. And that's the London Sunday Times, January 1st. For those of you who want to go to your newsstands and try to get it. It's on the back page of the front section. Big article. They say that the crop circles are fifth-dimensional geometry. That's what it is. And in case you don't know that, crop circles have been showing up in the United States, but it's being suppressed. And they're primarily showing up along fault lines on the West Coast. So stay tuned for that. They're actually happening, but the feds are doing an excellent job because of the satellites, making sure that the minute they're created, that they're out there as soon as possible to make sure it's bulldozed, plowed over, etc.
I was just curious, how did your communication process with the Andromedans, and is it at your request or their request?
They let me know. I will go outside at night, which I do every night, and I will look up at the sky and I will project a symbol, which is a communication that I have with them. And I don't always get a response. Sometimes I have to wait months to get a response. But they're almost always at night. They're both telepathic as well as verbal. Now, Mornay is the only one that has actually gone to the effort to learn to speak. Isaias doesn't. It's all telepathic, and they talk in symbols. Now, when you start, for those of you who channel, you may already be aware of this. You get impressions. Telepathy is speaking in holograms. That whole stack of papers, and you put it all together, Okay? When somebody's talking to you telepathically, they're giving you that entire concept of everything like this. The whole thing is right there. It is not where I am describing, well, sir, we take this, we move it to the front of the house, then we take this beam and move it there. It's not like that. You get the whole thing instantly. And then you have to learn how to unravel it. It's taken me years to do this. And they've been really patient. And I'm not the only one. They're talking to 3 other people. I'm the 4th. There's one in Argentina, who I don't know yet, but I've met somebody who does know him. There's one in Asia and one in Europe. And there are other groups that are also contacting a lot of people here. Because we're different. We are really different. I'm not saying we're better, but we're different. And they apparently see some value in us, those that really want to help. Even the regressives see value in us, which is why they're so hell-bent on trying to control us and to suppress us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of energies coming. There are a lot of earth changes that are coming. I can tell you this beyond a shadow of a doubt, absolute proof, positive, inside of myself, because I've been shown it. Truly, it could start any time. I'm amazed more hasn't happened. There are some really, really evil thinking souls here on this planet. I mean, it's unconscionable. It's unconscionable. If those of you know anything about the UN Biodiversity Treaty, if you look at some of the wording that's in it, it doesn't sound like a human being wrote that at all. You know, it's just too weird. There's just so much weird stuff. You know, and that's because they were influenced.
I think the UN was set up by extraterrestrials.
That I don't know. I think that maybe in its original conception it was honest, but it's certainly been perverted. Certainly been perverted. Because this is all about our evolution. You know, if it's true that we've been on 11th density, then we have knowledge, we have experiences that none of these other races have. And we already know how to do this. And we already know. And we just have to somehow find out those keys. Every single one of you in this room has a piece of this puzzle. Every single one of you. You know? And you gotta honor that piece that you have. And you've gotta honor yourselves. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not awesome, because you are. You are so awesome. It's just beyond words. You know, they want to consider you a natural resource. You will only be that if you believe it. It's that simple. This does not have to be a major struggle. You know, unless we just stick our heads in the sand and go into denial. I mean, how could you be in denial of all the stuff that's going on? I mean, it blows my mind. The regressives consider us a natural resource. They feed off of us. We make things for them. We produce for them. We create energy for them.
They harvest our thoughts. Their channel.
You know, we can create things out of thin air, literally out of thin air, that they need technology to do. Everything in your life was made, was created, manufactured. Okay? Even the idea was created. Okay? Everything we've ever needed, this planet provided for us. But how do you think it got that way? How do you think this planet knew exactly what to manifest, and we would end up here and be able to use exactly what we needed? I don't know if I'm wording that right. Human consciousness is not in the brain, but located in its entirety in the energy field and aura. This is the 1.5 to 5 ounces that the body loses at the moment of death. That's who you are. That's the only part of you that's really you. You just create this to play the game here. How our past and present educational processes have not prepared us to be completely conscious, creative thinkers. that organic and plant life forms do exist on 7 planets and 15 moons in our solar system. Now, just because we don't have the technology to pick it up doesn't mean it isn't there. Rediscovery that each of us is a part of the whole of the universe, and we are a significant part of that idea that we call God. And that God is the idea called love. That this accelerating self-discovery being experienced was created and activated by all of us. I guess when I look at history, and I look at where we are today, there's a history of history repeating itself. And, it's like a hamster that climbs on the wheel. No matter how fast he goes, as long as he stays on that wheel, he's not going anywhere. So maybe we just needed to make a change. That we, as a product of extraterrestrial genetic manipulations, are possessors of a vast gene pool that has many different racial memory banks of at least 22 extraterrestrial races in our DNA. Many different racial memory banks. That means that when things get a little bit higher, our kids, you're going to start knowing things that you don't have any idea how you know. But you do know it. You will know languages that haven't been spoken on this planet for thousands and thousands of years. You will just know because it's inside of us. We're a library. Barbara Marciniak, her piece, they talk about this as well. And I think some of the other groups do. Because of our genetic heritage, we are considered royalty. We need to acknowledge it, acknowledge ourselves, and seize our genetic heritage. Now, I'm going to end on this. The love that you withhold is the pain that you carry, lifetime after lifetime. And I just want to pass that on to you. Because nothing else that they have said has changed me more significantly than that. Yes, the love that you withhold is the pain that you carry, lifetime after lifetime. Responsible freedom of self-determination. Becoming truly self-confident and free to unconditionally be responsible for oneself without being coerced to accept some higher authority. I'm going to read it one more time. Responsible freedom of self-determination. Folks, thank you for coming. Becoming truly self-confident and free to unconditionally be responsible for oneself without being coerced to accept some higher authority. Ladies and gentlemen, you're awesome. Don't let anybody tell you different. Go out there and kick ass. Thank you.